The first day of broadcasting for Radio Fredericton was 22nd of August 1997, so it's been 20 years that we've been on air on the 90.5 FM dial in the Greater Fredericton region. The first idea to create Radio Fredericton, or CJPN, was to fill a need of francophone communication and also local information. The only media, electronic media, that was present in the Capitals region was Radio Canada in French. And they're doing a great job, but they did not talk specifically about local activities, because just imagine if Radio Canada would have to talk about everything, they'd probably just be a community bulletin non-stop. So it's the importance of the French community that really made the impact to convinced not only local governments, because we needed money to fund the first infrastructure, but also the community, the importance of a French radio station, and being in one of the biggest, if not the biggest, French center in Canada, community center, community Centre Sainte-Anne. Well, we had locals that we could use to establish this radio station. So in 1997 we had everything together. The wind was in our sails, and we opened the first French radio station in Fredericton. Valérie Roy was the first general manager, so she did establish a certain structure, and at first in 1997 wasn't today's reality, meaning that they were still doing tapes, and I said tapes, probably remember the cassettes. They also had the info on some hard drives, little hard disks, I have to say, that you'd put in the machine, and we'd have to have someone on air every 12 hours, meaning that you come here and you switch the system, because the system could only play 12 hours of music without having help. Today, totally different. We can play 366 days with nobody around, which we don't do, but the automatization and also the technology really helps us to keep on evolving in the product. And I love to use the word adapt, because this is what we have to do with the medias today. CJPN is adapting. We have a high quality sound on webcast for radio. We're also very present on Facebook and also Twitter, and some of our contests even go through Facebook. We try to make winners over the internet. So as you can see, we have to mold the radio station to adapt today's reality. So when CJPN started in 1997, we never had a very a big structure. We always tried to keep it light, and being a community radio station, volunteers always played a very important role, meaning that if we wanted to go live somewhere just to host, let's say, the Acadian Day, 15th of August, we would need a couple of volunteers, and it would lighten today's structure because we were supported by volunteers. So it gave the opportunity of Radio Fredericton to stay alive, even though the competition kept on growing in the Fredericton market, and more English radio stations established themselves, and they did have a very strong structure. So competition was fearful. We never let go, and being in the community center, not having to pay everybody's bills, being a community and a non-lucrative association also kept us going and helped us make the money we needed to pay salaries. Est-ce que je peux me permettre quand même? It was never a love story between Radio Fredericton and the community, and the reason why is being inside the community center, people kind of thought that the radio station could run without money. So during its 20 years we did have money challenge. Sometimes we lost our salesman or our sales lady, and we couldn't find one quick enough to be able to keep the ball rolling. So they did have some financial difficulties, but we've been here for 20 years, supported by the community, supported by the center, and I think we just keep on going. It's a little ups and downs. Sometimes years we get some government grants or some grants, and we think we won the lottery, but we know that the next year we might have some difficulties in sales, especially local and national sales, which are going a lower and lower every year. Since I became the executive manager of Radio Fredericton, and I'm also the executive manager of two other radio stations, St. John and Miramichi, we try to establish a partnership with other radio stations to make sure that we stay alive, that when we hit that bottom of the bottom, and one year we have less money or maybe not the grants we applied for, then we can hope that our friends in Miramichi did get it, so we can kind of transfer not money but efforts from other stations and also from the St. John station to come and support the one radio station that year that could need help. And by doing so, we are able to stay alive, and we do adapt in the market. We have enlightened our team, we have growth efficacy, and we are way more productive, and we are trying to make the essentials of the radio station and make sure that we fill up mission, meaning represent the French community of Fredericton. Yes, we do have Anglophones that tune in. I'm going to say why. Some of the people living in Fredericton want to understand French. They want to learn French. And Radio Fredericton, CJPN, is a tool for them to have a taste of our culture. And music plays an important role in the Acadian culture. And having that music available to these people, it's very easy for them to just turn on the dial, listen to 90.7. And we also have one honorable member of our team, he's called Paul Dixon. If you know Paul, he worked for some radio stations here in the greater Fredericton area. He's unilingual Anglophone, and he loves us. He says he loves the culture, comes here and helps us as a volunteer, not only on air, but with our towers or transmitters. He knows stuff that we need, and he's Anglophone. So the language barrier between Paul and us, it's been eliminated because we need people like them, and we never said no to any volunteers. We always need help. If it's not taking care of the studios, prepping up some equipment, working on computers, making some radio concepts, they work in French, they also work in English. I've been in the radio business for the last 20 years. I know I look like I'm 25, but I'm a little older, and so I did, how did I end up here? I don't know, let's be honest. What I know is that you're either a radio person or you're not. And I think that I am a radio person. I've started my career in 1994. I was 14 with Radio Beau Séjour, which is a French community radio station in Shediac. I worked in Saskatchewan from French radio station. Also worked for, just as a little contract, with a radio in St. Paul in Alberta. I was a journalist up north in Quebec. I also worked for the private sector in Moncton with their French radio station, and I even did some contract for Radio Canada. So by just being around and trying to hit your objective, one day I met some of the people that worked here, and they were trying to establish, and they did, the first community radio station partnership between 3 radio stations, meaning that the executive manager works for all 3 radio stations, but has to manage council board members, 3 board members that own everyone their own CRTC license for their radio station. So being the first executive manager in the middle, you try to keep everybody together, 3 different meetings, 3 different radio stations, and it's the case here for Fredericton. We have our own board member that manages, that orients, and also gives us the flavor they want to hear on the radio, or what they think that is necessary for the survival and also to represent the people of the capital. We are here for 2 reasons. First of all, if you're a Francophone community and you think you're important enough in this community, well, you need the assets to prove that you are. So we are a French radio station that proves that the community is important enough to keep us alive, meaning when they're saying, is there any Francophone people in Fredericton? Well, you know what? They even have their French newspaper that comes out every month, and they also have their functional radio station. So this gives a little edge of how important the Francophone community is in the capital. What we do, we represent the people. someone walks in our door today and says, I want to speak on the radio in French, first we're going to ask about what, and if it's interesting, we will put that person on air. This is their voice. It's their radio station. Some people call me sometimes, they're like, hey, why don't you do a show about hockey? And then I say, you know what? What I'm going to do, I'm going to prep the studio. I'm going to put a screen. You can watch the hockey game in the studio, and you can do it yourself. Because we're a trampoline, and we want to give you the assets and the tools so you can do it. So we do have a certain implication in the community, but forefront, this is a community radio station that is owned by the people.
And that's doing its job for people.
We're hoping to do the job for the people, because our mission does include education, entertainment, but also a social representation. Meaning that if you do have a problem with news, or you do want to speak about stuff going on in the government, going on in your community, in your associations, we need to act as a levy to promote these events, to promote these opinions, because they're a direct reflection of our community. Challenges that we have to go through is social medias. We have to adapt ourselves to the new media, meaning that we used to have volunteers that come here and do a show. Today, they do a podcast or they have a YouTube channel. So we do have to push a little harder to convince people to cross the doors. Best example, we need to be there as a tool for them to be able to use it. So we will, if not already done in some of our station, install cameras in the studios so they can podcast, they can live webcast, they can live Facebook, all of the above, to give it access to the information of the world. We're not only a community radio station now, but we're trying to expand and reach the markets, maybe of people that left Fredericton, give them an opportunity to listen a little taste of their community, what it was like in time, in the 90s, in the 2000s. I wonder what they're doing at the radio station. So we have to be accessible, and if we're not, we're just going to sink. We don't want to sink. So we're now evolving, presenting new product, marketing tools. For example, we installed a media board upstairs. So when our sales lady goes to the customer and says, you want to buy ads? They're like, I don't know if the radio station's that popular. When you know what? If you buy, you get a shot on our media board upstairs, and we guarantee that 2,000 people walk in front of that board every day. It gives a different perspective. And now we can offer them the radio deck. Meaning that when you go on the website and you click on Listen Live, you do have something that pops up, and we can do advertisement on that. And we also have a commercial vehicle where people can buy logos on or space on our car, and that drives between 3 of the biggest cities in New Brunswick. So we're trying to push harder and keep our place very anchored in the market to be able to survive. It's not easy being a community radio station, because most of the time, sometimes, some people say they're community, they should be free. We're not funded by the government, we're funded by the community. So it's totally different. We do have some projects, but they're not all that, meaning that if I get a project 1 year, doesn't really necessarily mean that I'm gonna get the same project the next year. So it's very hard to establish budget projections if you work on government grants, because you never know if they're gonna be there or not. So the tool that we need to use is sales, and try to convince people to buy here, and that in Fredericton the French community is important enough to make a difference in your business. And just to underline, usually people that are bilingual, they have key jobs either in the government or any private establishment, because they are bilingual in a bilingual province. So I think we have that edge. We're going to keep on pushing, keep on smiling, and hopefully we're going to get success in whatever we do. We need to adapt, and we also need to work together. And that's why that a couple years ago, all 3 board members got together, Fredericton, St. John, Miramichi, and decided to work together. Because if we do not do so, we will need 3 accountants, we will need 3 teams of salesmen, we're also going to need 3 directors and 3 technical directors. So by working together, and this is a first in Canada, because the CRTC is kind of prudent in front of the group management of radio licenses because they're kind of scared that the license will lose its community and its local taste. So our job is to make sure that we keep on pushing, giving local information, talking about the people, giving interviews, putting people on air to be able to show that we are here, we're alive, and we're vibrant in the community. What we're trying to be is the heart of the community, and we're hoping that all community associations around, and also political associations, will use this transmitter to get their information across, either within each other or if not, out to the community. It will never happen. We will never merge. The CRTC will not let us merge. There is one community board association that does own two Francophone community licenses, and it's Radio Beau Séjour. They're running a radio station in Dieppe and also one in Shediac. And here, because of the differences and the distance between the radio station, we will not be, I could be wrong, I don't think we can be able to convince the CRTC to merge all three licenses under a board, one board. What could be done is a hat association would go over our three board members, and these three people or these six people would take decision for all three, but also would recommend the board members to take some decisions. But no, I think it's impossible. And other reason, we have a co-op and we have two non-lucrative associations. So what we're doing right now is we're only sharing salaries and sharing efforts, trying to keep the radio station on air. For example, in Miramichi we do the morning show, in St. John we do the mid show, and in the drive back home we do the here in CJPN. So if any interviews come to the station, they want to go on air, we usually recommend them to do in the drive back home with our local host. So as you can see, we're molding, adapting, and trying to keep our operations efficient and make sure that we're always on top. So it's a little hard because we got a small team, but like I said, you just keep on smiling, look for positive days if they're not positive days that day. And I think we're doing great. I think the community likes us. We've been here for 20 years. We're here to stay. We're gonna modify our operations, go more technological. We're gonna be more present on air. We're gonna put more people on air, and this is the way we're gonna survive. Because the social medias are according to me, too mixed. They're not precise. And some of them don't have credibility, and like we hear a lot, fake news, and this is what we cannot do. We are responsible. We're redevable. We don't have a choice. We answer to the community, so we're not allowed to say fake news, and this gives us an edge, an importance in the greater capital.